Hey everybody, we're back with Deep Images and we're still covering samurai films. That's our current series of choice. I've got my co-host CF Roberts and the incredible Bill Mulligan. I'm Henry Covert and we are going to talk about one today that is really one of the heaviest ever in the genre. And it is a good bookend for the one Bill has covered, Harakiri. It's also from the same time period. This was 1966, and it also stars Tatsuya Nakadai, and it is in incredible black and white, unbelievable photography, one of the beautiful widescreen, chiaroscuro black and white contrast Japanese movies that no one else seemed to be able to quite pull off like the Japanese in that period. Um, so it's directed by Kihachi Okamoto, and he did a few other interesting samurai films. Um, but this is by far his most famous. And a lot of the credit I want to go ahead and shout out to the cinematographer, Hiroshi Murai, who does the incredible black and white cinematography, and also Sato, who does the music. Um, so it is based on a on a serialized novel that began being published in 1913, and it was published for about 30 years or so. And the creator was a guy named Takuya. No, that's not true. It's got, yeah, Kaizan Nakazato. So this guy created this character called Ryonusuke Chikoi. So Ryonusuke is an evil samurai. He is like the ultimate evil samurai. He basically uses his, well, he's a Ronin, but he basically uses his just status or image or persona of a samurai uh, to do what he likes a lot, which is kill and manipulate other people and harm them. He's very stoic. He's very cold. He's kind of like a sociopath. Um, he's very different than the characters that were being played of samurais during that period, especially considering he's the protagonist, and really different to a lot of them. But apparently, this serial was extremely popular, like I said, and all kinds of things happened to him. It was up and down. And Japanese serials prose are just like Japanese manga. There's a saga and it can be published for 50, 60 years. It can be thousands and thousands of pages, make all our long form storytelling in America look like, a cheap little, digest. So in this case, it's been adapted many times. The first film was done by Hiroshi Inagaki in 1935. He went on to do the Musashi trilogy with Toshiro Mifune. Uh, there's been a three-part film by Konyo Watanabe in the 50s, three-part by Tomu Yutindo in the late 50s, and then there was a three-parter in the early 60s by Kazuo Mori, and two of the installments were directed by Kenji Misumi a few years before he directed Lola from Cub and Daimajin and Zatoichi. Around the time he directed Zatoichi, actually, the first one. Um, and I have actually seen the Kenji Misumi version of this story. Um, and for whatever reason, it's definitely the weakest Kenji Misumi movie I've seen. It might be just it's earlier in his career. He's not quite as that eye he has isn't quite as developed. Maybe he wasn't into the material. I don't know. Maybe I saw like a cut or messed up print on YouTube. I did see on YouTube. Um, but nothing's going to really eclipse this version. And the director had done this movie, and the studio hated it and held back its release. And so they kind of blackmailed him and said, "Hey, we're going to remake this movie yet again." The story, by the way, is called Daibosatsu Toga, but Daibosatsu Toga, which means Daibosatsu Pass, or literal translation, the great of geographically, the Great Bodhisattva Pass. Uh, and I'm assuming that was kind of a real place. It's in a mountain range, and it's considered a Judy Iki as period drama and also a Chanbara samurai film, and it starts in like the late 1850s. It's in the Tokugawa shogunate toward the end of its era, and really a lot of this movie is kind of that way of life ending, and this character who's just completely a mercenary, just descending further and further and further into darkness as all these political machinations of these various assassins and shoguns and everything unravel around him, and he's always trying to kind of come out on top. And basically, if someone's in his way, he'll just whack them down. He doesn't really have much of a code of honor. What he does is he tends to bait his victims, and when they get annoyed, he's kind of passive aggressive, you could say. And then when they get annoyed and come at him, he lunges at them with kind of these obscure little moves. Some of them, they have name all of them. There's only one of them that's really important that I know the name of, but there's like the Do and the Kaga and all this stuff. But they show you kind of what they are, but they're so fast that you don't really get to see what any of them are, except this key one called the Chaku thrust, and we'll get to that in a second. So Ryunosuke it starts out, he's at Daigosotsu Pass, and there's an elderly pilgrim there with his granddaughter. This old guy's kind of ill, he's praying to die, and while the daughter goes to fetch him water, Ryunosuke overheard him, and he just cuts him down, and then the kid walks on, and then people cup him up, and they're like, "What happened to the old man?" And Ryunosuke's like, "Oh no, he wanted to die. I think somebody attacked him." And he's just Mr. Stoic. This is Nakadai playing a totally different kind of character than in the film Arakiri that Bill reviewed. And so he just walks on. He has a match coming up at this place called Mount Mitaki, and he's going to have it with this cat named Benujo Utsugi, and he's a kind of an overzealous dude who basically wants to um, get this title so that he can open his own fighting school. A lot of the story in the beginning revolves kind of the way Hong Kong films, like Shaw Brothers films, revolved around the stories of the school, the studio, the master teaching, all of that kind of thing. Well, it's all martial arts, really. Um, and so along those lines, the way that these Ronin are hoping to get out of poverty is to ascend and take over these schools. So uh, his wife, Bona, whatever his name is, he was Sugi, his wife, Tama, she poses as his sister and goes to Ryanuska and says, don't hurt my brother, and he really needs to have this job. So go ahead and throw the fight and lose. I know you're a better fighter, but please." And he's like, "Well," and he doesn't say a whole lot, but he kind of looks at her a certain way and touches her a certain way, and then he comes to this mill that his dad used to own or may still own. His dad is dying in his deathbed. His dad is the only person he cares even remotely about, and he's still kind of a stoic dick to him. But there's a water mill. And there's this goofy guy named Yohachi who they hired to kind of mind it, and he's like, "Yohachi, get out of here, take some time off." And he's like, "What the hell? I got to do this." He's like, "No, take the time off." And so the woman meets him there, pushes her into the straw, and you can probably guess what happens next. So, um, you don't really know whether Ryanuska really intended to honor his thing or not with her. But unfortunately, the husband does figure out what they were doing in that mill. And so he gives her an immediate divorce. Well, I wish I could do this nowadays. He just has a piece of paper, and he just went to the whatever clerical office that had to stamp on it. And he's like, "Now we are divorced." And so
That's a quickie.
she's all disgraced and stuff. And so they have the match, and of course the guy Tsugi's boiling angry, so this throws him off. And once again, Ryunosuke kind of baits him and brings him forward, and they're about to call a draw. and go on to another match. But this guy lunges at him and it goes flying over the whatever it's called. They're not a boxing ring, but whatever. And I'm so eloquent. But and they're like, it's a draw. And Ryanuska's like, no, it's not a draw. I won. They're like, well, how? He's like, because he lunged at me right before the word draw came out, and they're using sticks. And he's like, and I countered, I hit him in the side of the head with my whatever stick with this certain move. And they're hmm. Like he loves outsmarting people by all these fancy moves where he sort of cheats, but he doesn't cheat at the same time. I mean, he really thinks he knows more than any fucking swordsman on the planet. And well, the guy dies from the wound because his head. And so he's the guy's family decides to ambush him, but he's warned by Tama, the now divorced wife, who wants to go with him because she says we need to leave. And he's like, I'm not going to go with you, and he so I can handle some of these guys. And she's like, no, there's like 30, 40, 50 of them. And he looks a little concerned, but what the hell? And they come out, and I can't say he kills every one of them, but he kills a lot of them in very spectacular ways. Not a lot of huge amount of bloodshed. That comes later in the movie, but a few arms sliced off, and lots of whacking across the front where they just fall over. And he does let her come with him. So then 2 years pass, and this guy's living in another city, and he's basically kind of becoming a drunk. He's become a mercenary working for this kind of shady group of assassins, which are composed of different Ronin, and they kind of believe they're like a police force of enforcers, and they're pro shogunate, but they're against the people, if that makes sense. So they're kind of like cops nowadays, but he's working for them, and they've had a child, him and this woman, and she's clung to him. They've never officially married, and she's always regaling him with how awful he is, and he doesn't care about anything, and he's just total cynic. He's like, it's all your fault. You came to me to try to throw the fight, and I made your husband mad, and that's why we're in this mess. Now I'm ruined because of you, because all women are evil. But he's real stoic. He's saying all this, like just it's the way it is. And of course she's frantic, and he's like, well, I'm just gonna split. But he doesn't split for good, but he splits for a while, does a bit of wandering, and there's one loose end from the city they lived in, which was Wada. And in Wada, the husband that was killed at Sugi had a much younger half brother named Tioma Atsugi, and this guy is a cool guy. He's a nice guy. He's young samurai. And when we first encounter him, he's at this school run by this character Shimada, who's played by the great Toshiro Mifune. He's got to be in this movie, right? And he's clean shaven in this movie, and he has kind of a slicked back black hair, and he's wearing a black kimono, and he's like the master of the school. He's very calm. He watches everybody. Great performance. He doesn't steal the show exactly, but he kind of does. But he's not in the movie a lot. And I think some people who wanted to see this movie were disappointed that he wasn't in it more. But I think they missed the point of casting him in this role. And I'll get to why in a minute. Um, so uh, our main character now has gone under an assumed name, Ryotaro Yoshida, and he's like, I want to learn at your school, and I want to learn from whatever. He's like, well, let me let you have a duel with one of our assistant instructors. And so he does, and he beats the guy, and it's actually Tioma. So the brother of the guy he killed, like they don't know who each other are. But that's kind of what is going on. Um, because Ryunosuke's using a pseudonym, and he was too young. He doesn't know what he looked like. And he's, Ryunosuke's never seen this kid before. Um, so then Ryunosuke's really ballsy, and he says, well, because he basically they basically say, no, we're just not going to have you in the school. I just don't really like your bearing or whatever. And he's like, why don't I do it with you? And Shimada's like, no, I don't think so. I mean, he's kind of basically saying you don't want to do that. He's like, no, you don't want to do that. And Ryunosuke's like kind of pissed off and his feelings are hurt. And he's all, So he splits. He goes and hangs out with these assassins some more. And at some point, he's notified by Yohachi, the guy who ran the mill, who kind of gave him the room of straw to have sex with the woman. And he's like, "Your father's died," and he looks a little shaken. Like the only emotion he really kind of has almost in the whole movie. And he said, "It's all your fault." And he's like, "My fault." And so we have a flashback where Hachi is with the dying dad, and the dying dad has summoned Hyoma, and he says, "My son is, out there. I want you to kill him. I know he killed your brother." And Yohachi's like watching, like, what? This nice old guy is telling this guy to kill his son? And the old guy on his deathbed just gives him the whole spiel. He's like, he should have never been born. He's evil incarnate. All he joys in is the suffering of others and torture and destruction. He lives by the sword. He must die, but you can't kill him with any conventional means of swordsmanship. There's a special move you've got to learn, and you've got to go to Shimada's school. So that's the flashback. So you've come full circle. So when Yohachi tells him this, he says, "Well, you go tell them that I am here. I am Ryanuska, and I'm living in this place called Shimabara near Kyoto." And he's like, "You really want to do this?" He's like, "Yes." He's like, "I don't care. Tell him I'll slay him with one slash." So before that can happen, him and his little mercenary gang have a little assignment, and they besiege this area, and he's kind of holding back. He's not. He's been drinking quite a bit too. I mean, he's still incredible swordsman, but he's just, now he's probably a little down about his dad, but he would never tell you. And they attacked the wrong house or the wrong school, I should say. And guess who comes out but Toshiro Mifune, Shimada. And he's like, "Why are you here? Who are you?" And they won't tell him. And he says, "You're going to tell me or I'm going to make you." And they attack him. And he's kind of like trying to tell him, "Don't do that." And there's probably about 20, 25 of them. So there's a long scene. It's snowing, of course. Long scene of blood in the snow, black and white, and he kills all but one of them, two of them. He doesn't kill Ryanuska, who's just watching, and Ryanuska is actually afraid for the first time in his life. He's in awe. This guy's better than him, like way better than him. And he said, "I didn't." And Shimada's like, "I didn't want to kill all of you. You broke the honor here. And he lets the leader live. He's like, "Tell me who you are, where you come from." And the guy's like, "No, just kill me." And he's like, "Ugh." And he's wounded him, and he's just like lets him lay there in the snow. And he turns to Yanuska, and he's like, "This is the key. If I can get this key quote, um, that seems to. Oh yes, yes, the key quote that kind of sums up his philosophy." And he says, "The sword is the soul. Study the soul to know the sword. Evil mind, evil soul." And Ryanuska's just like, looking at him, and basically it could be a face off, but it's not. Shimada's basically like, "I got your number. This is the philosophy, and this is why you're so messed up." So he goes back into the school. Serenosuke doesn't know what the hell to do. He goes home, he drinks, he's depressed, and his wife finally just gets sick of him and tries to kill him. And he takes her to the garden. He, of course, ruthlessly murders her. Um, and then just keeps moving on about his business as a mercenary. Along the way, there's a subplot which is not as fully developed as it could be, and it probably shouldn't have been. It was a 2-hour movie. It would have been a lot longer. Because it comes from a serial, there's these strands of subplots, and these subplots aren't they're not really mandatory to the story. They could have been cut technically, but where they do intersect with the main story is kind of interesting because they focus on this girl Amatsu, and Amatsu was the girl whose grandfather he killed in the beginning of the movie. So years later now, she's in Kyoto, and now his assassins have taken him to Kyoto. And there's this nasty guy who's been trying to basically rape her and then press her into being a whore. And he's had his eye on her a lot. Of course, he's much older than her. She's, probably a 20-year-old girl. I don't know how old the actress, probably same or younger. She's absolutely stunning, just unbelievable, like an angelically beautiful woman. And her character is kind of like that too. And so she gets away from this guy, thanks to her uncle and uncle's girlfriend. So the crazy guy who wants to whore her out, dresses as a ninja and comes in and slays the uncle and rapes the woman and forces her to tell him where she is, and then he kills her. And so he goes to Kyoto. When he goes to Kyoto, he decides to try to look like the good guy. Of course, she doesn't know he's killed her family, and he saves her from being turned out into this thing called a ruin, which is like basically a brothel. And he's like, I kept you from the brothel or whatever. And I'm thinking, yeah, whatever. Um, and by this time, though, the assassins have come to the brothel to rest and hang out. So it's a fairly big building, and of course they all have the paper, practically the paper walls, and these very, very austere layouts. And as he drinks, Ryunosuke, he begins to hear the voices of everyone that he's killed. He begins to kind of get a little freaked out in the dark. And then Omatsu is sent to his room. Turns out she has been pressed into service. She's never been with this. I don't think she's been with any guy. And they start talking, and she says, somehow it comes on the subject of her background, and she said, "Yes, my grandfather was killed at Daigosotsu Pass X amount of years ago," and he's like, "Just get out of here, go." And I guess she's pretty glad she doesn't have to sleep with him. But that dread sends him kind of over the edge. So he just descends into abject insanity, and he starts just like slicing at the air and the walls because he thinks all these ghosts are coming to attack him, all these voices. And then it kind of spills over into one of the hallways, and he starts like slashing at the girls. He doesn't really hurt them that bad, but they just happen to be in the way. And so then his gang comes in, and they're basically like, what the fuck's going on? And while this is going on, some of the gang take the opportunity to wrap up one of the other subplots, and also to kill the guy who took the girl to the brothel. So, not totally satisfactory wrap up, but I guess they thought they'd throw that in there. And so while they're doing that, the other gang is like trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with the guy they know as Yoshida, who's Ryanuska, and he's gone mad. And so he begins attacking them, and there's a lot of them, and they keep coming, and they summon the whole gang because he's killing them. He's killing them by the dozens. Nothing is stopping him. He occasionally gets nicked or sliced, and finally gets to the point where he starts getting wounded quite a few times. But he keeps going. He still keeps killing them, and he starts to stagger. He gets cut along the side of his head, and his blood gets in his eye, so he's constantly have to wipe blood out of his eyes. He's got sliced on his leg, so he's starting to limp, and he keeps falling over. But he's totally mad, and he's just always flinging that sword around. He kills quite a few more people, but then slowly you see some more of them are starting to come in through the mist into the broken doors, and they just kind of are standing there, and he's just kind of teetering back and forth, like, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna die? Is he gonna keep going? Is he gonna surrender? What's he gonna do? And he just screams like a maniac and just decides he's gonna go for it, and he lashes out, and that's a freeze frame. That's the end of the movie. Now in the serials, he did survive this skirmish. Had other adventures. He was blinded. He had all kinds of karmic bad things happen to him over the series of the many other episodes. No one's ever adapted the entire story into film. That'd probably it had to be a long TV series. But they wanted to cut it right there and give you the idea of is he going to die? We don't know. And the other idea is that he's mad, he's unstoppable. This is how he's going to end up. However, is killing because that's what he's about, you know. Um, and it's just beautifully shot. The last scene where he's fighting all the people, it does progressively start. I mean, it's 1966 in black and white, but it does start moving towards that proto low infant cub level of arterial spray and you know limbs flying off and things. Not to that extreme, but it definitely goes there. And yeah, I think it's a masterpiece. I mean, to me, it's like the flip side of Harakiri, though. Same actor, but totally different. You know, it to me, it's kind of saying the entire system is corrupt, and this guy is so corrupt that he just plays it for what he can do for himself. And Hiyama, the guy who wanted to avenge him with the special thrust, he never gets to. Like that plot line just
Yeah, that's surprising.
yeah, and they kind of imply because there's an attraction between him and Omatsu, the sweet young girl. So there's kind of an implication maybe that Hoyama did at least rescue her from there, possibly while this is going on. But you know, I read in the Criterion liner notes that people who are familiar with the serial were like, "Oh, well, yeah, that's fine. We know what's going to happen, so it's cool." But everybody else was like, "Oh, what the
Hmm.
hell?" But they said it was kind of just part of the chaotic nature because it's really just him staggering from one place to another, one victim to another, one enemy, one woman. You know, he's just a killing machine, and when he finally has to kind of reckon with what he is, you know, he goes completely mad.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I thought about doing this film actually because I saw it a long time. Just sort of picked it up, Sword of Doom. I mean, okay, that sounds pretty cool. Um, can't go wrong with a title like that. And watching it, it was puzzling to me how it kind of, I hate this term usually, but subverts your expectations.
hmm
Because like I'm just waiting for Toshiro Mifune to show up again and take this guy out, and he's got his scene, and then he's gone.
I thought that was going to happen too the first time I watched.
Yeah, which but that's kind of cool actually. That real life doesn't always work out that way. It still tells a good enough story that you're satisfied,
Well, in a
although it
way,
is
Toshiro,
ambiguous at the end.
yeah, in a way, Shimada did win because when he's
Hmm.
going mad, hears that
That's
little
true.
anomaly echoing in his head.
So
So,
he basically killed him without drawing his sword.
right,
That's,
right, he just had to make him face his own evil and nihilism. You know,
which is
um,
an interesting idea, and that's greatest samurai would be one that kills you, or at least psychs you out, you know, just by their words and everything. It's a cool film. This is a cool genre. I mean, samurai are kind of like cowboys. I'm
hmm,
not really interested in cowboy movies. The guy comes into town, good guy, bad guy, black hat, white hat. There's a duel, yawn. But when you see a great film like The Searchers, you're like, damn, they've taken this kind of simple black and white, good and evil story, the tropes, and just turned them on their ear and
yeah,
created characters that are so much more complicated. In a way, the simplicity of most of the stuff that's out there, and I suspect 99 out of 100 samurai films are terrible. They're just schlock, like
I don't know.
the
I've
way
seen a
most
lot. I'd say
the way
90.
most Western stories are. Most
Yeah,
Westerns aren't that great. They're very formulaic, and
right, right.
most
Yeah,
martial arts films are fairly formulaic. But that just makes it that when you find one that isn't,
Yeah.
it really hits home.
I think I've told
that's
you
the
all this before.
90% rule.
Yeah, I think I've
Yeah,
told you all this before. I mean, those genre. Oh, I know. I'm pretty sure I have because I think Billy, or at least you, if not Chuck, were on the last time we talked about this. But I love watching all of those genres, even the crummy ones, because it's
yeah.
like junk food. But you're right, because when you're young and you go, "Oh man, spaghetti westerns are so cool," samurai movies are so anyone you see is like, "Oh," and then after you see like 100, 200, you become a connoisseur because you realize they're like exactly what you're saying, like everything else. There's just a certain percentage that truly, you know, stand out, rise above. So,
And you learn to appreciate those creators who they were given a budget to make a spaghetti western. Literally nobody cared. None of the money people cared whether it was a good film or not. It was just make it this long so we can market it. And the easy thing to do would be to just make the same damn movie over and over again. And that's what a lot of them did. So when you have someone who's like, you know what, I've been given a shot here, I've been given an opportunity, let's mix it up a little. Let's do something that isn't being done. Let's make
Uh,
this interesting. I mean, there's the artist in you coming out.
Well, for a zillion, I love Yakuza is another one. I love watching Yakuza movies, but not everybody's as good as Shizon Suzuki or Fukasaku. But Suzuki doing Branded to Kill, that was like
Yeah,
boom. Conversely, in spaghetti westerns, I mean, by '68, even the Django, which was shaking up the Clint Eastwood style and
right.
turning it on, by the Django was imitations were becoming common, but then the Great Silence happened. And it's like nobody thought that was kind of movie was going to get
Right,
made.
right.
And Chuck did a good coverage of that on one of our episodes. So, you guys have any closing thoughts?
No, good pick. I think every film we've talked about uh, is in this little series here has been a winner.
We'll have some more sessions to come and more episodes. So, hold tight and please like and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers and we need your help. So, hit
Tell
that
your
thumbs up.
friends,
Yes,
tell your enemies, whatever you have more of.
everybody.
We
Everybody
don't know your
sentient
life.
that can press a button.
throw it at your sister.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
We'll be back soon.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.